Don't be afraid. Since you were little, I've always been the one to braid your hair. You know very well the plan we had at Yun's house. Your job was to first tamper with the security surveillance system in her home, so no one could see us hypnotizing Liang. It was supposed to be a simple technical task, nothing could possibly go wrong. Yet somehow, Jing ran out of her room and stopped me from searching the book collection. Worse still, it triggered Yun herself, all the way in China, to take charge of the situation. How could that happen? They couldn't have known about my plan beforehand, so the only explanation is that you deliberately left the surveillance system intact for them to discover. Why would you do that? Have you fallen in love with Liang? During the days Li Xiaoxian stayed at Liang's house, she had ample opportunity to disable the security cameras. But she intentionally left clues behind, hoping Liang would uncover her true identity sooner. She believed that even if he learned about her secret mission and affiliation, he would still help her gain freedom, because he was the kind of man who, driven by instinct, would take a bullet for her. Li Xiaoxian had every reason to believe that his care for her could outweigh any conspiracy or deception. As long as he was given a chance, he would fight desperately to protect her. At that moment, the biometric curve on the screen surged violently. Nagayoshi Rentaro slowly massaged the back of Li Xiaoxian's head with his fingers, still speaking in cold, measured Japanese. When we stormed the Gumu village base, you recklessly saved Liang multiple times. Was it to repay him for saving you before? You knew the bullets fired on the street wouldn't kill you, only cause minor injuries. His rescue was nothing more than the eager gesture of a man infatuated with a fantasy. He liked you because we carefully crafted you into his idealized dream woman. Your hair, your name, your clothes, your mannerisms, all designed solely to earn his trust and affection. He'll forget you soon enough. He's the type prone to sexual fantasies. When he looks at you, he might actually be imagining someone else. There's no need for you to sacrifice yourself for him, or perhaps now it's he who's making you fantasize. Endorphins and dopamine create illusions of love. Young women often can't control their bodies, can they? Li Xiaoxian knew the doctrine drilled into her since childhood in the organization. Love was merely an insignificant chemical reaction in the brain, a tool angels use to manipulate humans. The sole purpose of every angel was obedience to rebuild the Third Reich. She'd encountered many exceptional men during her missions, yet none had ever stirred her heart or earned her trust like this. But faced with Liang ordinary, even a little foolish, she suddenly felt an overwhelming transcendent urge to stay by his side. Watching him face death with optimism, fighting daily to escape his fate and reshape his future, ignited in her a courage she'd never known. Yet now, she had to humble herself, begging for a chance to survive. She understood this was another battle. She'd never failed a mission before, and she couldn't afford to fail now. She told Nagayoshi Rentaro, "Sir, you've misunderstood, and Liang is actually very shrewd. On the very first night we met, operatives from the organization broke into David Group to retrieve the lightning strike device used in the murder, and we accidentally ran into them. I'd already suspected they'd strike that night, so I repeatedly tried to stop Liang from going to assess the Feng Shui at the headquarters. But he insisted, ran into the technicians, and triggered a high-speed chase and gunfight. I reported all this to you that same day. 3 days later he began suspecting my identity, and remained wary of me ever since. It was all due to poor coordination. The Americas division didn't sync their retrieval of the lightning strike device with our schedule, causing this misunderstanding." Nagayoshi Rentaro glanced at the screen. Surprisingly, Li Xiaoxian's biometric curve had calmed. That didn't necessarily mean she was telling the truth. A seasoned angel like her could easily suppress emotional fluctuations, but verifying her honesty no longer mattered. What mattered was whether her desire to leave was absolute. Li Xiaoxian continued calmly, "Later I followed orders and lured Liang to Genting Casino, Malaysia, only to receive your command to abandon him. But by then, Liang had already taken the initiative and started tracking Madvei himself. At that time, Nagayoshi Rentaro had just captured Yun. Wasting another angel on a clueless fool who likely knew nothing about the Dragon Codex made no sense, especially with the imminent test at the Gumu village base. Regardless of the test outcome, they'd launch an immediate assault to seize both the captive and the machine. Recalling Li Xiaoxian was the most logical move. Whatever Liang did on his own afterward truly had nothing to do with her." Nagayoshi Rentaro laughed. He had to admit Li Xiaoxian was skilled at deflecting blame. Somehow, she'd made the whole mess sound perfectly reasonable. He asked her. "And then? Since the organization never ordered me to kill Liang, I reasoned that a Feng Shui master might eventually prove useful. It's better to let someone live and feel grateful than to kill them outright. Sir, you're also a Feng Shui practitioner. I thought you'd agree with my approach. Moreover, I personally handled everything from tracking to capturing Madvei, so you can trust my loyalty to the organization." Ha 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 ha. Nagayoshi Rentaro threw his head back and laughed loudly. "Don't even think about leaving the organization. There's no precedent for voluntary departure. Anyone who tries is treated as a traitor and executed. This mission, however, you completed exceptionally well. Your judgment shows maturity. You could even take over the entire Angels someday. I might assign you to politics, safer, higher-level work. Right now, you're just stressed. After the new year, I'll give you a new assignment. For now, go relax in Kagoshima for a vacation." Li Xiaoxian forced herself to speak calmly. "No, sir. My age and physical condition can no longer serve the organization. I want an ordinary life. If the organization doesn't trust me, you may erase my memory before letting me go." Her resolve was unshakable. Even death couldn't deter her. Nagayoshi Rentaro understood everything now. If she were a rookie angel, he'd eliminate her immediately. But she was one of Asia Division's pillars, one he'd personally trained. Giving her one last chance was, in truth, giving himself one last chance. Carefully, Nagayoshi Rentaro rebrided Li Xiaoshan's hair and coiled it into an intricate, meticulously arranged bun. He said to her, "Complete one more task, then you may leave." "What task?" Nagayoshi Rentaro placed both hands warmly on Li Xiaoshan's shoulders and said, "Kill An Liang within 7 days." On the screen, Li Xiaoshan's biometric curve spiked sharply, leaving a neat row of tall, jagged peaks. A low warning tone chimed from another screen before Nagayoshi Rentaro. The monitor linked to An-Yun's room showed a response. Her breathing had grown noticeably stronger, and subtle movements flickered across her brow and eyes. Nagayoshi Rentaro dismissed Li Xiaoshan from the command room. As she stepped out, she cast one last glance at An-Yun's screen before closing the door. An-Yun normally slept well and never lingered in bed, but this time she couldn't wake up for a long while. She knew she'd been asleep for ages, her dreams were blank, yet she felt as if she were searching for something she couldn't find. She remembered An Liang and An Jing were still in Malaysia, but mother and son couldn't meet just yet. Finally she woke. An-Yun kept her eyes closed, listening carefully to the surroundings for a long time. Only after confirming no one was nearby did she slowly open them. In the command center 3 floors above, Nagayoshi Rentaro watched the screen intently, zooming the overhead camera in on a close-up of An-Yun's eyes. Her eyelids twitched occasionally, but her eyeballs remained steady. He repeatedly cross-referenced the movement of her eyes with numerical coordinates on another screen. Her physical responses showed little difference from when she was asleep. Normally, upon waking, a person's body temperature would rise, their entire system kicking into gear like an engine starting up, and the monitor readings should have spiked accordingly. But after a single alarm beeped, Nagayoshi Rentaro noticed from the subtle flutter of her eyelids that An-Yun was already awake, yet nothing seemed out of the ordinary. He glanced at a large screen in the distance, which remained completely blank. Nagayoshi Rentaro knew this elegant woman was far more than her gentle appearance suggested. If she were merely ordinary, he wouldn't have gone to such lengths to capture her alive. An-Yun sat up in bed and looked around. The spacious bedroom was furnished like a regular apartment. Wardrobe, bookshelf, coffee table, television, all the usual household items were there, yet something still felt missing. She walked over to the table to pour herself a cup of hot water and noticed a row of green tea bags thoughtfully placed beside the electric kettle. After brewing her tea, she settled into a comfortable round sofa. Now she understood the room clearly. There were no windows. All this furniture was merely meant to conceal hidden surveillance and listening devices. But An-Yun knew it couldn't be just about monitoring, there had to be more to it. The ceiling wasn't flat. Instead, it curved smoothly like an inverted bowl, with a small sphere hanging from its center. It reminded her of a satellite TV receiver. She didn't know where she was. But Nagayoshi Rentaro had gone to great trouble to bring her here. He certainly wouldn't keep her idle forever. Sooner or later, he'd make contact. She finished her tea and walked toward the door. The handle wouldn't turn. Upon closer inspection, she realized it was just a solid knob shaped like a lock. She slapped the door panel with her palm. It was exactly as she'd suspected, iron plates disguised as wood. She then approached another door, the bathroom. Stepping inside, she examined every detail carefully. Suddenly, a soft chime rang through the room, followed by a gentle female voice. "Mrs. An-Yun, there are no cameras in our bathroom. Please feel free to use it without embarrassment." An-Yun smiled. The Japanese really did pay attention to detail. Even their underworld operations offered highly personalized service. No wonder Japan's service industry ranked among the best in the world. If only the United States could reach this standard someday. Back in the command center, Nagayoshi Rentaro kept his eyes fixed on the screen. An-Yun emerged from the bathroom looking radiant, her neat long dress subtly outlining a figure as youthful as a girl's. The sharpness and wisdom in her eyes in no way diminished her mature charm, and her short tidy hair revealed the fair, slender neck framed by the straight collar of her gown. Watching that graceful neckline, Nagayoshi Rentaro's brow furrowed slightly. He couldn't help wondering how many suitors this woman must have drawn in her youth, and if he'd been born 10 years earlier, he surely would have been one of them. A Western-style breakfast appeared through a lift hatch beside the closet, accompanied by light Mozart piano music filling the room. This considerate treatment put An-Yun at ease. She ate every bite of the ham, cucumber, and bread, knowing full well that whatever came next would be a fierce, unpredictable battle, and she couldn't afford to lack strength. On Nagayoshi Rentaro's large screen, images began to appear, and the tension on his face gradually eased. The screen displayed a brainwave imaging scanner, a device capable of converting faint neural signals into visual images. The bowl-shaped ceiling of An-Yun's cell was in fact a wave collector linked directly to this scanner. Now Nagayoshi Rentaro saw on-screen An-Yun happily sharing breakfast with her late husband who had passed away years ago, and Liang and An Jing, all laughing and chatting together. Seeing this, he knew the technique was working perfectly on her. After failing to forcibly access An-Yun's inherited memories via brainwave scanning at a Beijing hotel, Nagayoshi Rentaro had realized brute force wouldn't work on this woman. Torture was even less viable. Only by first relaxing her mind and gently guiding her thoughts could he hope to glimpse the deepest secrets buried within. Having finished breakfast, An-Yun still saw no sign of Nagayoshi Rentaro making a move. She picked up a magazine at random from the bookshelf. It was a Feng Shui publication from Hong Kong, filled with case studies, debates among masters, and advertisements. She grabbed another. It was National Geographic, Scanning the rest of the shelf, she noticed all the books were related to Feng Shui and geography, and only in Chinese or English. Clearly, they'd been selected specifically for her. She had little interest in the Feng Shui magazine to her. Its content was nothing but recycled clichés. Public publications like this never contained profound insights anyway. They existed only to spark readers' curiosity and admiration for so-called masters. So she took a geography magazine and returned to the sofa to flip through it. Just then, the 40-inch ultra-thin screen on the wall lit up. Nagayoshi Rentaro appeared on screen, smiling warmly. "Senior Enyun, I sincerely apologize for the trouble I've caused you." Enyun looked up at the screen and nodded politely. "Mr. Nagayo, thank you for your hospitality. What brings me to your residence?" Now that the brainwave scanner was functioning properly, Nagayoshi Rentaro saw no need for further pretense. He said directly, "To be honest, I brought you here to borrow the legendary Imperial Feng Shui manual, the Long Ju. My late father told me the N family has guarded it for generations. Both my grandfather and father were deeply curious about the Long Ju but never had the chance to glimpse its secrets. If I could just see it once, I'd consider myself blessed beyond measure." As he spoke, Nagayoshi Rentaro glanced up at the large screen. Instantly, an image of a safe appeared. Inside, a delicate wooden box lay open containing 3 yellowed thread-bound books. His heart pounded. This was almost too easy. And Yun knew it was pointless to lie and claim the Long Ju was lost. The Nagayo clan had known of its existence since the Bakumatsu era. During World War II, Nagayoshi Rentaro's grandfather, Nagayo Mataro, had followed the Japanese invasion forces deep into mainland China, chasing after the Long Ju and engaging in a bloody battle with her father and Ruping. The En and the Nagayo families had become sworn enemies, all because of the Long Ju. She held her teacup and said to Nagayoshi Rentaro, "Mr. Nagayo, the Long Ju isn't really worth reading. Feng Shui is a practical art. If it were truly useful, it would have spread widely long ago. The En family has kept the Long Ju merely like a keepsake, stored away and never opened. In this day and age, we might as well exchange our insights on Feng Shui and push its practical applications forward, rather than dig through useless old scrolls. I think borrowing it can be forgotten." Nagayoshi Rentaro glanced again at the large screen. An ancient mountain map flashed across it, instantly overlaid by modern city buildings, proof that Enyun had recalled content from the Long Ju. He'd expected her refusal all along. His goal was simply to steer the conversation gently, prompting her to remember fragments of the Long Ju bit by bit until he could reconstruct its location from her brainwave data. "Ha," he replied. "I share your view, senior. Modern Feng Shui has advanced far enough. Dwelling on outdated texts is regressive. My curiosity about the Long Ju stems only from my grandfather's great sacrifice for it. I'd also like to understand the difference between Imperial Feng Shui and Folk Feng Shui. Isn't it the power of dragon veins that sustains dynasties? Have you ever read this book yourself?" The moment he finished speaking, he lifted his eyes to the screen. Lines of classical poetry scrolled past like flowing water, each embedded with the character dragon, striking and ominous. Behind them, layered images of the White House in Washington, D.C., appeared from every angle. Nagayoshi Rentaro was stunned. This meant Enyun had once applied Long Ju Feng Shui to analyze the White House. If they continued talking, she might soon reveal insights about the Tokyo Imperial Palace. Enyun gazed calmly at the screen and said, "I haven't read it. These days Yanggong Feng Shui is more than sufficient for me. Doesn't Mr. Nagayo find Japanese Feng Shui adequate? The Kunito Kotachi Shinto school has a 1,000-year history and has been verified countless times. I've heard that Tokyo itself became the imperial capital only after Tokugawa Ieyasu laid down a powerful Feng Shui formation and even avoided the American atomic bombs because of it." Nagayoshi Rentaro checked Enyun's biometric curves. Dozens of lines continued at their steady normal rhythm, as if she were chatting amiably with a friend. Yet her claim of never having read the Long Ju was clearly a lie. Without the brainwave scanner directly mapping her thoughts, a standard polygraph would have deemed her truthful. Such composure, or perhaps such skill in deception, was extraordinary. Whether or not Enyun had read the Long Ju didn't matter. As long as this conversational atmosphere held, she would eventually reveal its location. Nagayoshi Rentaro lifted his own teacup, relaxed his expression, and asked casually, "If the Long Ju is so useless, why hide it anywhere at all? Is it kept at home?" Suddenly, the large screen flashed an image of a 2-story cottage surrounded by typical American countryside scenery. Nagayoshi Rentaro glanced at it briefly, then quickly shifted his gaze back to the camera focused on Enyun's face. Her eyes had sharpened instantly. He looked again at the screen displaying her thoughts, and there unmistakably was his own face, followed by the background behind him, gradually resolving into a full view of the command room. The layout wasn't perfectly accurate, but the position of the monitors directly in front of him was rendered with uncanny precision. Nagayoshi Rentaro suddenly understood. Through his eye movements and speech rhythm, Enyun had deduced that he was observing her thoughts from another angle. And his last question had been too abrupt. He hadn't first answered her query before pivoting to his real aim. That slip made her realize this dialogue was, in truth, a one-sided interrogation. Every question inevitably triggered an answer. Neither spoke. They stared at each other through the screen. Nagayoshi Rentaro checked Enyun's thought display again. It still showed only his own image seated in the command room. She was testing him, probing whether he could interpret her mental state. Her defenses were now fully raised, shielding her mind completely. It was a silent, invisible counterattack. Nagayoshi Rentaro fixed his gaze unwaveringly on Enyun and reached for the keyboard, switching the television image in her room to a spiraling black and white pattern. He deeply regretted letting her look directly at his face while speaking. It had been a mistake. If An Yun had wanted to escape, she could have done so back on Kuiwei Ridge in Beijing. But when He Kun was murdered to silence him, she noticed something strange. Both He Kun and David, CEO of the David Group, had died outside their fated death dates. That revelation gave her a new idea. Few could alter or escape fate. If someone could force a person to die before their destined time, then perhaps one could also help someone evade an early fated death. Her son, An Liang, was constantly on the run, using Feng Shui principles to evade his own premature demise. If she could uncover the mysterious force behind these unnatural deaths, it wouldn't be bad for anyone. So she changed her escape plan. When Sheng Weiguo arrived as her rescuer, An Yun nearly surrendered without resistance. To ensure An Liang could find her, she handed Sheng the phone containing the full recording of the battle on Kuiwei Ridge, the only clue she left behind. An Yun had nothing to fear. She sat here precisely to uncover the secrets behind Nagayoshi Rentaro. What had intruded into her memories during that hotel encounter in Huanhai? What force could kill someone outside their destined fate? Who was the cat He Kun had mentioned? And why had Nagayoshi Rentaro suddenly begun pursuing the Longjue? As An Yun focused her mind on Nagayoshi Rentaro's surroundings, the flicker of doubt in his eyes gave her immense confidence. She quickly confirmed one thing. The direction his eyes kept darting toward must be where the thing reflecting her thoughts was located. It could be a device or a person. In this process, Nagayoshi Rentaro wasn't the observer. The true observer was whatever his eyes were fixed upon. In a sealed room, no new physical clues could appear. But if she controlled her thoughts, she could force him into direct confrontation. An Yun climbed onto the bed, crossed her legs, formed the mudra with her hands, and gathered her spirit inward, sealing her consciousness tightly. Sure enough, Nagayoshi Rentaro began calling her name repeatedly, trying to draw her back into conversation and reactivate her mental imagery. But the screen before him showed nothing, only a blank white haze, as if the camera had plunged into thick smoke. The brainwave scanner was a mature, rigorously tested instrument. Even if a fool were placed in the room, the chaotic landscape of their mind would still form discernible images on screen. Yet An Yun had completely shut down her thoughts, entering a state of formless void. No self, no objects. Nagayoshi Rentaro was reminded of Zen's concept of emptiness, but for An Yun, this wasn't philosophy, it was a tangible, achieved state. He suddenly noticed her sitting serenely on the bed, hands in mudra, her expression tranquil and features radiant, truly like Guanyin Bodhisattva descended to earth. No wonder the esoteric community called her the living Guanyin. Nagayoshi Rentaro knew that dragging things out like this wouldn't yield any results. In truth, An Yun was forcing his hand. Knocking her unconscious or killing her wouldn't be difficult, but extracting the location of the Longju from her mind required her to stay alive and actively thinking. Torture would trigger neural and cognitive self-defense mechanisms, potentially sealing off her memories entirely. Pushing further might even drive An Yun to suicide. Hypnotic interrogation with drugs proved less effective than the brainwave scanner. Nagayoshi Rentaro knew time was running out. Rescuers from Matvei and An Yun could arrive at any moment. He activated the angel's communicator. The iron door to An Yun's room rotated like a trapdoor. On the other side stood Shui, clad in a sleek black leather bodysuit, her head covered by a motorcycle-style black helmet that fully enclosed her face, its mirrored visor hiding her eyes. Without hesitation, she took 2 quick steps forward, leapt into the air, and drove her knees straight toward An Yun's face. An Yun had been seated cross-legged, fingers interlocked in a mudra. Now her eyes flickered open slightly. Her palms flipped upward, intercepting Shu's strike precisely before her face. Lightly, she drifted backward and landed gracefully on the bed. Her front foot traced a small outward arc, then settled into a stance shoulder-width apart. Her hands coiled protectively before her chest, as she dropped into a half-squat, the classic Chinese martial arts posture known as the Erzi Qianyang Ma horse stance. Nagayoshi Rentaro watched the main screen. An Yun's mental activities surged back to life. A girl's face flashed across the dark screen. Clearly, An Yun had memorized Chu's appearance and build in an instant during their first encounter. The image flickered rapidly twice more, revealing dynamic figures practicing Muay Thai and karate, followed by a cascade of intricate, unfamiliar techniques. It was evident An Yun was racing through combat scenarios in her mind, predicting Shu's next move. Shu was shorter and slighter than An Yun. After her knee strike, she landed squarely where An Yun had been sitting, then used the bed to spring upward again, launching a kick at An Yun's head. An Yun didn't block or parry, she simply sidestepped half a pace to the left. The kick whistled past her cheek and slammed hard into the wall behind her. But Shu didn't retract her leg. Mid-air, she twisted her body, swinging her left leg over her right to deliver a downward axe kick aimed at An Yun's skull. An Yun, however, had already glided along Shu's attack trajectory, slipping past her flank in a tight triangular roll to land behind her. By the time Shu's kick missed, An Yun had already locked her forearm around Shu's neck and, using the momentum of her roll, hoisted Shu off the ground and hurled her violently toward the door. Shu twisted mid-air to regain balance, planting one foot against the solid door lock and the other against the wall. Crouched like a spider in the corner, her tense posture radiated fierce fighting spirit and intensity An Yun clearly sensed. Watching the fight footage, Nagayoshi Rentaro was mildly surprised. He'd known An Yun was skilled in combat. Back at Kuiwei Ridge, 2 squads totaling 10 operatives had failed to capture her alive. That's why he hadn't wasted time sending ordinary soldiers into the room, avoiding unnecessary casualties. But Shu was a high-level angel just like Li Xiaoxian, yet in their first exchange, she'd missed 3 times and then been casually thrown out the door by a neck clamp. It was unimaginable how deep Chinese martial arts could go. Had Yun applied just a bit more force, Shui's neck would have snapped. Seeing Shui preparing to charge back in, Nagayoshi Rentaro immediately shouted her down. He ordered her to return to the command room and take his seat, then picked up a wooden sword and his helmet and walked into Yun's room himself. Upon entering, Nagayoshi Rentaro bowed deeply. "Senior Yun," he said respectfully, "please instruct me." Then he donned his helmet and swung the wooden sword straight at her. The room was spacious enough for Kenjutsu techniques to unfold fully. Empty-handed, and Yun could only dodge left and right as they chased each other rapidly around the room, smashing furniture in their wake. Between swings, Nagayoshi Rentaro spoke. "Your martial skill is exceptional, senior. But I'm younger, you'll inevitably lose in the end." And Yun ducked into the bathroom during a brief opening and grabbed a large towel to block strikes she couldn't evade. She wondered why everyone entering wore such bulky helmets. Was it really just fear of getting their skulls cracked? Japanese warriors prided themselves on Bushido. They wouldn't stoop to such unfair fights without a deeper reason. Nagayoshi Rentaro wasn't fully focused on the fight. He kept pressing questions. What's the safe's password for the Longjue? Where's the villa storing it? Who owns that villa? And Yun noticed his attacks alternated between intense and slack. Was he deliberately leaving gaps for her to answer or think? She refused to respond, refused even to listen or contemplate. Her sole goal now was to defeat Nagayoshi Rentaro and seize that helmet to uncover its secret. In the command room, Shui recorded everything, including Yun's brainwave scans. A person might stay silent or lie, but no one could hear a direct question without their mind generating some form of yes or no response. And Yun was no exception. As Nagayoshi Rentaro asked his questions, images of villas, people, the Longju and numbers flashed rapidly across the screen amid the chaotic combat. With careful analysis, they could pinpoint the Longju's location. Spotting Nagayoshi Rentaro's distraction, Yun seized her chance the moment his sword swing missed. She chased the blade's path, and as it reversed for another cut, she dropped low, slid beneath it, and emerged behind him. The towel in her hand snaked between his arms, wrapping tightly around his right wrist. Then, reaching over his shoulder, she gripped the front rim of his helmet and yanked it sharply backward. Nagayoshi Rentaro felt Yun vanish from his sight. Then a chill swept over his scalp. He realized instantly, he'd been caught in a sentry elimination technique used by special forces. If the helmet had a chin strap, his jaw would have been jerked upward, exposing his throat to a vertical stab aimed straight for the heart. If not properly fastened, the helmet would be ripped off and smashed back into his own skull. The helmet flew off. He lunged forward to evade the expected blow to his head, but the towel still bound his wrist, preventing escape. Yanked off balance, he crashed to the floor. As he rolled to his knees facing Yun, a black helmet came crashing down toward his head. He dodged sideways, but it struck his shoulder with a dull, bone-crunching thud. He screamed in pain, dropped the wooden sword and scrambled toward the door. The moment Yun seized the helmet, she was startled. It weighed as much as a large watermelon. This wasn't a lightweight motorcycle helmet, it was solid metal. When it struck Nagayoshi Rentaro, its sheer weight made it fly from her grip, hitting the floor with a heavy, lifeless thud, as if sinking into mud rather than striking hard tile. This is a lead helmet. The puzzle that had been troubling Yun suddenly unraveled. Lead was the best shielding material against radiation and electromagnetic waves. Both times their captor entered wearing a lead helmet. It was solely to block his own chi, allowing only Yun's chi to be read. That meant there had to be a device receiving her chi, and that receiver must be the bowl-shaped ceiling and the central metal sphere. Yun yanked the towel wrapped around Nagayoshi Rentaro, caught the wooden sword flying from his grip mid-air, stepped onto the bed, and used the mattress's spring to launch herself high into the air, slashing toward the metallic orb on the ceiling. Nagayoshi Rentaro seized the chance to bolt out the door. Instantly, the large screen in the control room, displaying Yun's decoded thoughts, went completely black. Shui, watching through the monitors, saw Yun in her traditional Chinese long robe slice through the spherical receiver with graceful ease, then land lightly back on the floor. At that moment, flashing blue lights lit up the control room, an external surveillance failure alert. The entire underground facility immediately escalated to level 2 security lockdown, and Liang stood casually at Gokokuji subway station wearing a thick jacket, carrying a large backpack and holding a guitar case. Beside him stood 3 young white men dressed identically. They looked like foreign students studying in Japan, about to head out for a picnic. They all waited near the boarding spot for the first train car. A train arrived, paused briefly, then departed. But they didn't board. As soon as it cleared the platform and no other passengers were nearby, they slipped silently into the dark tunnel, sprinting after the departing train. And Liang checked his watch as he ran. This was the ultimate test of their endurance. The next train would catch up in exactly 3 minutes. Within that window, they had to reach the secret entrance to the Apostles' hidden Tokyo base, or be torn apart by the oncoming train. His backpack weighed roughly 20 kilograms, the guitar case another 3, and with nearly 30 kilograms of gear strapped to his body. Sweat poured down his face and his eyes rolled back from exhaustion. He hadn't rested since leaving Malaysia for Japan, and had just survived a fierce battle. Days of relentless travel had pushed him to the brink of collapse. Elena still couldn't figure out why Liang and his sister had come to Tokyo independently to track down the Apostles. Maybe it was simply to ensure David didn't die in vain, or perhaps there was a deeper reason. Either way, they now found themselves aligned for different motives, and cooperating with Liang was clearly the best option. and Liang reached the designated secret entrance precisely within the 3-minute window, just as the next train roared past behind him. He dropped his backpack and pulled out a large-scale model vehicle. It had 6 wide off-road tires. He pressed a button on its flat chassis, and hydraulic arms rose up, mounting an array of sensors, cameras, and a machine gun. It was, in fact, a combat robot. Gasping for breath, he tore off his jacket, revealing a black Special Forces uniform underneath, fully loaded with ammunition and electronic gear, transforming him into the image of an American counterterrorism operative. He slung an M4 shotgun over his shoulder, drew a tranquilizer pistol from his waist, and crouched in the corner. Glancing back, he saw the 3 white men had already changed into black tactical suits and donned night vision comms helmets. The team accompanying Liang were all highly trained mercenaries. One immediately activated a broadband detector to scan for nearby security cameras, while another switched on a through-wall personnel tracker to locate enemies beyond the walls. With the robot leading the way, the 4 of them advanced cautiously deeper into the tunnel. Elena coordinated everything from a small inn near Gokokuji, surrounded by an array of electronic equipment of various sizes. Before the mission, she told Liang that the Apostles were a Nazi restoration group formed by defeated German aristocrats after World War II. Over decades, they'd evolved into a multinational conglomerate with the ultimate goal of rebuilding the Third Reich. Backed by formidable German technological resources, the Apostles relentlessly pursued the development of ultimate weapons, and whenever they identified promising new technology, they'd stop at nothing to seize it. Their recent deployment of heavy forces to Genting Casino, Malaysia, to steal the particle directional resonance device was driven precisely by this agenda. If a machine capable of triggering earthquakes fell into the Apostles' hands, the global balance of power would shift violently. The most immediate and catastrophic consequence would be countless deaths, and possibly even the collapse of human civilization. Liang had never heard anything about the Apostles from Li Shoshin. But now, with Elena's explanation, everything Li Shoshin's organization and Nagayo Mataro had done suddenly made perfect sense. The Nazis had never hidden their obsession with mystical powers from Tibetan psychic energy to the Yama crystal skulls. They dispatched experts and troops to hunt them down. Their pursuit of the imperial Feng Shui manual Long Jue clearly followed the same logic, since legend claimed Long Jue held the power to overthrow rulers and establish new dynasties. And Yun had never told her children that Long Jue still existed in the world. But for Liang, rescuing his mother alone was reason enough to risk everything. He wouldn't reveal his true objective to Elena, though he still felt uneasy about her background. If she knew he was also trying to rescue someone from the Apostles, he'd become her pawn. Not to mention, he'd already secured $8 million in charitable funds and a full set of the latest US military gear for the rescue, all without her knowing his real motive. He wondered if his luck was finally turning. Was this what the old saying meant? After surviving great danger, fortune surely follows. When planning the rescue, Elena had provided a complete 3D map of the Apostles' base. Beneath the vast cemetery near Gokokuji lay 7 concealed underground levels. To Liang, it bore an uncanny resemblance to the David Group's research center. He almost suspected they were working on the same project. Elena explained that after Japan's defeat in World War II, U.S. occupation forces had thoroughly mapped Tokyo's underground infrastructure. But after the Americans withdrew and handed everything back to the Japanese government, any new facilities built secretly thereafter remained unknown to the U.S. As for the Apostles' base, it had originally been a joint German-Japanese fascist nuclear weapons research facility. After the U.S. withdrawal, the Apostles used bribery and diplomatic channels to secretly reclaim the site from Japan, promising to place it under Japanese management and development. With backing from right-wing Japanese military leaders who supported the Apostles, the base was covertly returned to their autonomous control, on the condition that all research findings be shared with the Japanese military. Tokyo's underground city was Japan's secret. The Apostles' nuclear base was the Japanese military's secret. Even the emperor himself was unaware that a section of the underground city, under military jurisdiction, did not belong to Japan. Elena's depth of knowledge about the Apostles unsettled Liang. She'd received data from some obscure America's division investment firm, supposedly just to recover corporate research, but her understanding of the Apostles and their Tokyo base was as clear as walking to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And she could instantly procure massive quantities of the latest U.S. military equipment from bases in Japan. This so-called investment company operated less like a business and more like a shadow government, and Jing wore a Japanese schoolgirl's navy uniform, her hair tied into 2 small braids, and followed behind Liu Zhongtang with a tiny backpack jingling from all the trinkets hanging off it. Beneath her ultra-short skirt, she wore black thigh-high socks that revealed a tantalizing sliver of bare skin. Liu Zhongtang, sporting a crew cut and dressed in a suit, carried a large backpack and walked solemnly beside Jing as they entered the library next to Hugo Temple. The library was about to close, but Liang had scheduled the assault for exactly 6 o'clock that evening. Since neither of them spoke Japanese, they pretended to be a teacher and student urgently needing reference materials, slipping inside just before the 5:30 p.m. closing time. This library served as one of the main entrances to the Apostles' underground base. Above ground, it stood 5 stories tall, below it plunged 7 levels deep. No one had ever been below the 3rd basement level, and no one even knew the elevator could descend that far. According to intelligence provided by Elena, the building's elevator could reach the lowest floor, though inside the cabin, only buttons for B1 and B were visible. To access deeper levels, they needed to input a secret code using the 7 buttons from the 5th floor down to B2. Of course, no outsider would know the password, so decoding had to happen right inside the elevator. They strode confidently toward the elevator like regulars. The moment Lu Zhongtang stepped in, he pulled out a small device resembling a radio and activated its camera jamming function, instantly blacking out any surveillance feed. And Jing reached into her backpack, pulled out a compact box, unplugged it, and jammed its connector into the elevator's control panel. The lights flickered twice. Then the elevator shot downward with a soft whoosh, and Jing immediately gripped 2 well-balanced Beretta automatic pistols, holding them behind her back with both hands. Per Liang's plan, and Jing's team was tasked with a frontal diversion. Their job was to seize control of the elevator and trigger chaos within the Apostles' ranks. Ironically, this spot was actually the safest. By 6 o'clock, the library would be closed, and no one would care if an elevator stalled. As long as they held the elevator, they could retreat to the surface at any time. If the Apostles resorted to open violence, guns blazing, blades flashing, the noise would echo into the library above, inevitably drawing police intervention. Elena had explained that the Apostles' base was a top-secret military installation. Police involvement would alert the media, which in turn would alarm the emperor himself. Such exposure would plunge both the government and the military into crisis, giving anti-Japanese nations worldwide a perfect pretext to accuse Japan of secretly preparing for World War III, and America, the very nation that had helped conceal this underground fortress, would be forced to lead a swift military crackdown to distance itself from accusations of backing Japan's militarism. Therefore, neither the military nor the Apostles could afford to let this exit become public knowledge. Even if they clashed with Jing's team, the Apostles would have to fight covertly, never openly. And Jing would fire the first shot of the battle. The moment the clock struck 6, she and Lu Zhongtang were to infiltrate any random tunnel on a lower level until the enemy retaliated. Then they'd fall back to the elevator. And Liang had also accounted for the Angel's use of lightning strike devices, which could kill silently via brainwave manipulation. Guarding the elevator was thus a relatively safe assignment. If either of them felt dizzy or disoriented, as if under psychic attack, they could sprint back, slam the doors shut, and rely on the elevator shielding to block a significant portion of hostile electromagnetic waves. And Jing lowered the elevator to basement level 5, the designated assault floor per Liang's instructions. When Elena mentioned Matvei's abduction at the Roppongi bar, Liang immediately suspected Nagayoshi Rentaro's involvement, and by extension his ancestors. The Nagao clan had been Feng Shui masters for generations, and their participation in constructing Nazi bases would certainly follow strict Yanggong Feng Shui principles. Though Feng Shui schools varied widely in technique and spatial design, all relied on the same temporal framework, the yin-yang 24 mountains marked on the Luopan compass. No matter how complex the system, time remained the one unchanging constant. Built before 1944, this space's Chai timing was calculated using the 9 stars flying method of that era. Basement level 5 currently occupied the imprisoned position of the auspicious 8 white left assistant star, making it the least favored by celestial fortune. Even if fortified like a bunker, this floor suffered from the worst luck in the entire facility. Attacking here first gave them a decisive advantage purely through timing and cosmic alignment. Lu Zhongtang glanced at Jing, whose cheeks were flush with excitement, and whispered, "Sister Jing, we still have time. Don't rush in too fast." And Jing checked her watch. "It's almost time. This floor is their unlucky spot. We've got the upper hand in both time and space. Nothing will go wrong. Hey, let me fire your rocket launcher later, okay?" "No way." Lu Zhongtang shifted his backpack farther behind him. "That thing's heavy. If you can't steady it, you'll miss. The time's up. Let's go." As soon as she finished speaking, they darted to either side of the elevator doors. The doors slid open. Lu Zhongtang first extended the camera jammer outward. Only when its tiny red light blinked and turned green did they cautiously peer out. Before them stretched a smooth pitch-black corridor. Sure enough, an old-fashioned security camera pointed directly at the elevator entrance not far ahead. Clearly, the Apostles never anticipated a frontal assault. They hadn't upgraded their surveillance system at all. Equipped with night vision goggles, the pair moved swiftly and silently down the passage. Though the corridor branched into numerous side tunnels, Elena's map precisely marked the route to the base's main entrance. Within minutes, Jing and Lu Zhongtang arrived undetected at a sealed iron door. With external security cameras disabled, the base's automatic lockdown protocol kicked in as expected, sealing all iron doors. But breaching electronic locks wasn't a combat soldier's job, and precious ammunition couldn't be wasted blasting through metal. Meanwhile, the 3rd support squad already had technicians hacking into the base's internal network. And Jing and Lu Zhongtang took cover around a bend in the corridor and waited. Moments later, the iron door hissed open automatically. What wouldn't open automatically was the defensive line beyond. The instant Lu Zhongtang poked his backpack past the doorway, a flurry of light, rapid gunfire erupted. They instantly recognized the sound. It was the XM-Byte futuristic assault rifle Li Xiaoshan had used during their firefight in Genting Casino, Malaysia. This German-made weapon was definitely not standard issue for the Japanese military. And Jing had worried Elena might have tricked them into storming a Japanese army base, but hearing that distinctive gunfire put her mind at ease. She yanked Lu Zhongtang behind cover and whispered, "They fired first. I was hoping I'd get to shoot first." She placed her pistol, fitted with an electronic sight, on the floor and nudged it slightly around the corner. Through the display on the sight side, she saw a half-height concrete barricade with several soldiers crouched behind it, rifles braced atop the wall. The moment they spotted her, They unleashed another burst of fire, and Jing yanked her pistol back and pressed down hard on Lu Zhongtang's shoulder. Flashbang now. Lu Zhongtang flicked his wrist and tossed a flashbang down the corridor. With a soft puff, a blinding flash lit up the passage. He felt a sudden pressure on his back, and Jing had seized the moment when their enemies ducked for cover, leaping off his shoulders like a monkey onto the opposite wall. By the time the soldiers raised their heads and thrust their rifles over the barricade, a girl in a Navy-style school uniform was already perched atop the corridor ceiling, raining precise single shots downward. The gunfire came so fast, it sounded like automatic fire, each bullet striking a soldier squarely in the head. By the time Jing landed lightly after pushing off the wall, the first line of defense had already fallen. The two sprinted toward the barricade only to be met with another burst of suppressing fire. The enemy's defenses were far tighter than expected. Jing crouched behind the fortification and turned to Lu Zhongtang. How come there are so many of them on TV? Terrorists usually have just a dozen or so guys, and the police wipe them out in seconds with one sweep. Are we fighting the Japanese army here? Because this could start World War III? Lu Zhongtang chuckled. Hehehe, of course there are lots of them. This is their main base. Even the US military took months to clear out drug cartels in Colombia. Jing yanked open Lu Zhongtang's backpack and rummaged through it. He asked, "What are you looking for?" "There's only a rocket launcher and a shotgun in there." A flashbang. "We're pinned down, we can't even lift our heads. We're out of flashbangs. Want a smoke grenade instead?" Lu Zhongtang pulled 2 grenades from inside his suit jacket, and Jing grabbed the rocket launcher and yanked it open with a metallic clatter, extending it to a full meter in length. Lu Zhongtang quickly warned, "Don't mess with that thing, it's got massive firepower." She hoisted it onto her shoulder. Relax, it's too heavy anyway. I'll fire it so you don't have to lug it around. We're not the main assault team, we're just here to stir things up, throw it." A smoke grenade arsed from Lu Zhongtang's hand, instantly filling the corridor with acrid smoke. Jing rose from behind the barricade, shouldering the launcher, through her night vision goggles. Everything was a white haze. Lu Zhongtang looked up just in time to see Jing grinning like a child holding her dream toy, finger squeezing the trigger. Then she dropped instantly, tossed the launcher aside, and covered her ears. A deafening explosion rocked the corridor, followed by a furious hail of return fire like a locust swarm unleashed. Jing peeked up at Lu Zhongtang. "Huh? Did I miss?" He frowned and shook his head. "Let's fall back to the corridor near the elevator. If that doesn't work, we can retreat to the library." Jing let out a soft mem, her face crumpling as if she might cry. Just as they turned to withdraw, a series of even more violent explosions erupted ahead. A shockwave surged through the corridor like a tsunami, and the gunfire ceased abruptly. They exchanged stunned glances. "Looks like we hit their ammo depot," Lu Zhongtang said. Jing's face brightened immediately. She drew 2 automatic pistols and declared, "God loves nuns. Israel, burn the city and all its plundered goods, dedicating them wholly to your Lord, leaving it forever desolate, never to be rebuilt. Brother Liu, let's charge forward." Lu Zhongtang hefted his shotgun and made the sign of the cross over his chest. "Oh God, thank goodness you made Sister Jing a nun. What did you say?" "Nothing. Won't all this blasting disturb the civilians above ground?" For the first time, Lu Zhongtang sensed in Jing's genuine concern for ordinary people. He smiled gently. "Japan has earthquakes all the time. The locals are used to rumbling underground." While Jing and Lu Zhongtang waged their noisy battle, and Liang's rescue team advanced in complete silence. With technical support, the entire base had been plunged into darkness. Electronically controlled doors stood wide open, turning the Apostle's stronghold into an exposed pitch-black cave riddled with passages. And Liang guided a remote-controlled robot ahead as they crept toward level 6 underground. During mission planning, they'd had access to a full 3D map of the facility, but without equipment capable of penetrating deep earth layers, they remained ignorant of the exact internal layout. Militarily speaking, this rescue operation was blind and reckless, which was precisely why Elena urgently needed Liang's involvement. Elena understood the Feng Shui foundations of the Tokyo Apostles base. To counter the Japanese Feng Shui master's designs, she needed another Feng Shui expert. She believed the Tokyo facility was constructed according to Feng Shui principles, and that Liang alone possessed the skill to dismantle that layout and deduce the locations of key areas. After studying the maps, Liang reached the same conclusion as Elena. This underground complex was indeed built on Feng Shui doctrine. In fact, the entire greater Tokyo underground city formed one colossal Feng Shui formation. At first glance, Tokyo's surface streets appeared chaotic and unplanned. An ordinary Feng Shui practitioner examining only the urban layout, even with standard subway maps, would find no discernible flow of earth energy. The city seemed like a disordered village, incapable of evolving into a global metropolis. But when Liang saw the complete map of the underground city, everything became clear. This subterranean network was the true Feng Shui heart of Tokyo. After receiving immense dragon chi from the Akaishi Mountains to the south, the city distributed this energy throughout its depths, using a layout perfectly aligned with the Hetoloshu numerological diagrams. The spiderweb-like underground structure, centered on the Tokyo Imperial Palace, mirrored the orderly street grid of Beijing, with one crucial difference. Beijing's design unfolded above ground, while Tokyo's lay beneath. Beijing faced south from the north, Tokyo oriented southeast from the northwest. In fact, Gokokuji Temple in Tokyo's northwest served as the Imperial Palace's protective mountain. And the Apostles' base, designed 70 years ago by Nagayo Mataro, had cleverly harnessed dragon chi that arrived even before the palace's own geomantic alignment, creating an effective protective formation during World War II. But Feng Shui shifts with time. What worked then now bristled with vulnerabilities. Thus, skilled Feng Shui masters periodically adjusted critical positions in accordance with celestial cycles. Yet Feng Shui serves human needs, it cannot override practical function. 70 years ago, Level 7 underground was designated as a nuclear warhead research center. Such infrastructure couldn't simply be relocated every time Feng Shui demanded it. Facilities involving radiation were typically buried at the deepest levels. Regardless of Feng Shui fluctuations, Matvey, the kidnapped researcher, would almost certainly be working on either level 6 or 7. The only question was which room, however. Liang wasn't most concerned about Matvey. His first priority was to find his mother and Yun. Only after that would he consider whether he could rescue Matvey as well. When he returned to the hotel with An Jing and Liu Zhongtang to study the map behind closed doors, they ran into a major problem. The underground base had an extensive network of horizontal corridors, but all the main passages were vertical, elevators of various sizes. Every primary exit was hidden in secret locations around Hugo Temple, making directional orientation impossible according to Feng Shui principles. Orientation is the foundational element of Feng Shui calculations, typically determined by the direction of the main gate and primary corridors. But here, the main axis pointed straight up toward the sky. How could one possibly use the sky as a reference for directional calculation? And Liang noticed that the base lay precisely on the central axis of the Tokyo Imperial Palace, and shared the same orientation as the palace itself. Therefore, he decided to apply an advanced Feng Shui technique known as establishing direction by the dragon vein, using the entire city of Tokyo's incoming dragon vein to determine orientation. Based on this northwest to southeast alignment, he calculated the positions of Tianji, heavenly calamity, and Dixing, earthly punishment. In Feng Shui layout theory, these two spots are ideal for prisons and execution chambers. They carry the strongest malevolent energy, so neither the master of the house nor any critical equipment would ever be placed there. Moreover, the Dixing position lay directly south, which also happened to be the base's innate water direction. Innate water governs prosperity, health, and population growth, making the southern sector a mix of auspicious and inauspicious energies. Thus, prisoners who were meant to be kept alive would likely be held in the southern Dixing zone, while those marked for execution would be placed in the eastern Tianjie zone. Since An Yung hadn't offended Nagayoshi Rentaro or the apostles, Feng Shui logic suggested she was probably being held on the 6th or 7th underground level, specifically in the southern Dixing area. And Liang didn't reveal his deduction to Elena. Regardless of whether she understood Feng Shui or whether he was officially in command of the rescue operation, his plan remained the same: infiltrate from the southern Dixing zone first, with rescuing An Yung as the top priority. When he laid out his full strategy, a feint in one direction while striking directly at the Dixing position, Elena agreed immediately. As if she had no knowledge of Feng Shui at all, taking advantage of her compliance, An Lang entered the detention area directly through the subway entrance south of Hugo Temple, and Jing and another diversion team successfully disabled the surveillance system and opened the electronic doors, allowing An Lang's southern infiltration team to proceed smoothly. Along the way, they occasionally encountered guards, all of whom were swiftly subdued and neutralized. Upon reaching the 6th underground level, they began systematically searching room by room in the southern sector. The supporting mercenary team used through-wall personnel detectors to scan each chamber. On the small screen, and Lang saw that the rooms behind the walls didn't resemble prison cells at all. Each looked like a single-occupancy hotel room, fully equipped with everyday appliances. More alarmingly, every room contained a young woman holding a gun, pressed against the door, ready to burst out at any moment. An Liang recognized these girls instantly. He'd seen them before in Genting Casino, Malaysia. They were the elite assassins of the apostles known as the Angels. But why would Nagayoshi Rentaro, a man deeply versed in Yanggong Feng Shui, station his best fighters in such an inauspicious location, the very place designated for prisoners? If An Yun wasn't in the Dixing zone, then where was she? Above them, a series of explosions echoed through the upper level, shaking the corridor. And Liang knew the other two diversion teams had launched their attack successfully. Yet here in the south, he still couldn't find his mother. Panic surged through him, his mind going blank. Every extra second underground increased their risk. With no time to waste, he waved his hand backward and led 3 teammates toward the eastern Tianji position. All Feng Shui schools divide directions into auspicious and inauspicious categories. Though terminology may differ, the underlying principles rooted in the 5-element cycle of generation and conquest are largely consistent. Given that their objective was solely rescue, not annihilation, and Liang deliberately avoided advancing toward the main operational floors or the wealth and power sectors. Instead, he focused exclusively on the most Feng Shui unfavorable zones to locate hostages. A 6-wheeled robot resembling an eager puppy scurried ahead. At every corner, it proved invaluable, conducting electromagnetic, biological, mine, and through-wall scans. Packed with cutting-edge global technology, the machine could even retaliate automatically if attacked. It was a dangerous piece of equipment, lacking humanity and packing excessive firepower, but far safer than sending a live scout. Under these circumstances, An Lang was willing to test this new weapon. The 3 teammates behind him kept full attention on rear security. They had just passed a row of rooms where the detectors clearly showed armed female operatives hiding behind the doors. Any moment they could storm out firing. Moving from south to east meant crossing the southeast quadrant. In a northwest to southeast-oriented structure, the southeast functions as the Bright Hall, typically housing large rooms, conference halls, or sizable storage areas. This understanding gave Anlayang the confidence to pass directly through the Angels' quarters. The southern Dixing zone consisted of narrow corridors and small rooms. Engaging in combat there would trap them easily. But the Bright Hall, serving as the floor's central hub, offered multiple escape routes in all directions, guaranteeing at least one path to survival. The robot charged forward, its live feed streaming directly into Anlayang's visor. As expected, the southeast corner of the base revealed a column-supported platform-style corridor, further proof that Japanese and Chinese Feng Shui shared the same roots. Anlayang raised 2 fingers and tapped the ground, signaling 2 teammates to hold the platform while he advanced eastward with the robot and 1 assistant. The moment he stepped into the eastern corridor, a pungent cloud of tear gas rolled toward them. The robot immediately blared a toxic gas alert. Anlayang darted to the nearest wall and quickly donned his gas mask, but the little machine detected targets and boldly pushed forward into the smoke. The thick fumes forced Anlayang back to the central platform. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from the southern corridor they'd just left. Glancing back, he saw all 3 teammates pinned behind pillars, unable to raise their heads under enemy fire. From the east, the robot's gunfire crackled again. Anlayang switched his visor feed to the robot's perspective. Through the haze, he saw a massive black barrel repeatedly spitting fire. Screams and hacking coughs mingled in chaos. Using the thermal imaging biodetector, he watched as soldiers rushed reinforcements into defensive positions and nearby rooms. But wearing gas masks, they couldn't identify their attacker as a machine. They fired blindly into the smoke, only to be picked off with surgical precision. The robot stormed past barricades and into rooms, swiftly and ruthlessly eliminating every living target. Bodies fell one after another. It was pure slaughter. The kill rate in the eastern corridor was 100%. Originally intended as a pincer trap for Anlayang's team, it had instead been completely wiped out by robots that felt no fear of death. Throughout the entire process, Anlayang hadn't fired a single shot, yet watching the slaughter unfold like a video game left him unnervingly calm, a deeply abnormal state of mind. On screen, killing someone felt like scoring points in an electronic game, but in reality, each opponent lost their entire life. Anlayang couldn't accept the robot's massacre, yet he couldn't press the remote button to halt the attack either. If those men reached him, he'd be the one shot dead by bullets. He waved toward his rear. 3 teammates fell back while firing, alternating cover until they regrouped behind him. Tear gas filled every corridor. With the power outage, the exhaust fans couldn't operate, so they could only rely on natural airflow to slowly disperse the toxic fumes. Stepping over bodies littering the floor and wearing biodetection goggles, Anlayang and his team pressed forward. The rooms lining both sides remained ordinary single-occupancy guest quarters, but not a single living soul remained inside. The robot charged ahead, veered into an open doorway, and raised its machine gun toward 2 women inside, locked in combat while wearing gas masks. Through the robot's camera feed, Anlayang recognized a familiar figure. In the pitch-white fog where visibility was 0, she used a signature set of moves, fast, relentless strikes to corner her opponent against the wall. When Nagayoshi Rentaro realized the base was under attack, he immediately prepared to evacuate Matvei and Anyun. To him, this facility, despite all the effort spent kidnapping them, was now nothing more than a worthless shell. The Apostles' Gokokuji base housed numerous microwave devices capable of manipulating brainwaves, and deep in its lowest level lay nuclear research infrastructure dating back to World War II. Ironically, this very reason explained why the base lacked active defensive systems. Powerful explosions or advanced weaponry would generate electromagnetic interference, disrupting the delicate instruments. Thus, defense relied solely on passive measures, fortifications, poison gas, surveillance cameras. The Apostles never imagined anyone would dare launch a full-scale assault with heavy weaponry beneath bustling Tokyo. After all, the attackers clearly knew exactly what they sought. The most critical secret here was the brainwave control system, an enormous yet fragile apparatus. A direct weapons strike would destroy it before it could even trigger its self-destruct sequence. Additionally, the aging nuclear equipment in the deepest levels still served as the foundation for developing weapons more powerful and compact than nuclear bombs. Yet any combat-induced radiation leak would ensure no one escaped the base alive, forcing attackers to rely on cunning rather than brute force. For Nagayoshi Rentaro, if defense became impossible, he only needed to activate the self-destruct systems of key facilities, erase core technologies and data, and then leave without worry. Nagayoshi Rentaro had anticipated an attack, but never its ferocity. He'd assumed deploying guards and the Angels would suffice to eliminate intruders within the base. But when external cameras went dark and power failures cascaded through every level, he understood. These attackers had woven a perfect net. Every strike point, every tactical step, had been meticulously planned to exploit the base's weakest links. Unsure of the enemy's identity or strength, he ordered each level to defend independently, dispatched computer specialists to the command center for electronic countermeasures and delay tactics, and personally led several Angels down to level 7 to retrieve Matvei and technical staff. He sent Shu to level 6 to extract Anyun and meet him at the vehicle exit. Yet, after the blackout, radio communication worked only within the same floor. The moment Nagayoshi Rentaro and Shu split up, contact was lost. Both sides could only follow the original plan, escort the hostages to the exit. If the attackers didn't know the layout, escape might still succeed. Fully armed, Shu arrived at Anyun's room and opened the door. Thick smoke from the corridor immediately flooded in. Even through her night vision goggles, she saw nothing. Instantly, she activated her portable lightning strike device, aiming to knock Yun unconscious for extraction. This instantaneous brainwave assault required minimal calibration, just increasing the emission frequency would incapacitate or even kill the target outright. Believing Yun was already down, Shu powered off the device and began searching the room in the dark, only to have her wrist suddenly seized. As she tried to yank free, a heavy fist slammed into her face. Raising her arms to shield her head, she took rapid, brutal blows to her chest and abdomen. The punches came in seamless, interlocking sequences, so fast she never got a chance to draw her weapon. From the exact moment the lights went out, and Yun had guessed what was happening outside, she'd quickly put on the lead-lined helmet Nagayoshi Rentaro had left behind and quietly hidden behind a wardrobe. She couldn't see who entered or what they did, but when Sue fired the lightning strike device at her, the helmet blocked the rays, leaving her fully conscious. Without hesitation, Yun slid toward the sound, reaching out in total darkness to grab her attacker's wrist. Fighting blind played directly to her advantage. Her mastery of Wing Chun was a style literally trained with eyes closed. Wing Chun doesn't rely on sight to track opponents, it uses hands and feet to stick to the enemy's movements, exploiting joint angles and anatomical dead zones with precise continuous strikes. Once contact is made, the opponent has no escape. Wing Chun only stops when the foe collapses. As the old saying goes, hands stick to hands, nowhere to run. Trapped in this endless, suffocating darkness, Shu suffered wave after wave of crushing blows. Her arms felt bound by thick rubber bands. Every movement she made was twisted off course. Every action exposed a new opening for attack. If she stayed still, her face would be pummeled again. The moment Shu opened the door, and Yun had smelled the tear gas, she'd held her breath throughout the entire fight, but intense exertion meant she couldn't last long without air. That's why she'd attacked with everything from the start. Her only chance to break out was to defeat this opponent and seize her gas mask. When Liang saw it was Yun, relief flooded through him. He immediately cancelled the robot's attack command, darted behind Shu, and knocked her out with a single palm strike. Softly, he called out Sister Yun. Hearing Liang's voice, Yun's heart warmed with joy. She reached forward blindly and felt a gas mask and her brother's hand. As she pulled the mask onto her face, she gasped for breath and said, "Ah, Liang, you came just in time. Another few seconds and I'd have passed out. Where are we?" Liang grabbed her hand and started running back. "We're beneath the Tokyo subway," he told her. "Sister Jing and Liu Zhongtang are upstairs. We're pulling out, you'll see your sister soon." As soon as Liang finished speaking, a submachine gun was pressed against his head and the robot remote control in his hand was seized. It turned out to be one of the team members who had been covering his back all along. They'd assumed Liang was solely focused on rescuing Matvey. But after he pulled out a beautiful woman and suddenly declared he wanted to go home, they weren't about to let him walk away. And Liang didn't owe anyone an explanation, but these were mercenaries. If they didn't rescue Matvey, they wouldn't get paid, and they certainly wouldn't let him leave without a fight. And Liang knew full well that the mercenaries beside him weren't friends. If he stood in the way of their money, they wouldn't hesitate to pull the trigger. He immediately stopped and laughed it off. "Ah ha ha ha, Sister Yun, we still need to rescue Matvey. He's the star of this rescue mission. But hey brothers, I honestly don't know where Matvey is." And Yun looked surprised. "Matvey's here? So everything that happened in Beijing and Genting Casino, Malaysia, it was all Nagayo Mataro and Nagayoshi Rentaro's doing." She turned to Liang. "Do you have a map? I'll help you find Matvey." Liang quickly retreated into the room and ordered one of the mercenaries to place an electronic visor over Yun's eyes. He plugged it into a laptop and instantly a three-dimensional schematic of the underground base appeared before her. The map displayed a structure resembling a five-tiered crab-shaped cake. Two large symmetrical claws embraced a rectangular platform. Each level had elevators on both sides of the platform, and directly ahead lay a railway track. Liang explained, "This base faces Xun from Qian, the same orientation as Tokyo itself. The Tokyo Imperial Palace sits directly ahead, right at the city's center. Where are we?" "The sixth sub-level. Inside the left claw." "I need to see the full map of Tokyo." Liang immediately pulled up a large-scale sandy topographic map of Tokyo and pointed the cursor at Gokokuji Temple. "We're right here beneath the cemetery at Gokokuji. This is the spider silk dragon grid." "What?" Liang was stunned. He'd always believed his mother had already passed down all her knowledge to him, yet here she was uttering a term he'd never heard before. "You wouldn't understand. Do you have the base's drainage system schematics? We need to reach the largest outlet. Once we're there, we can follow the drainage backward to find Matvey." Liang stared at her, wide-eyed and confused. He blinked and whispered in Chinese, "Sister Yun, are you deducing this through Feng Shui or divination? You're not just making this up, right?" "Sister Jing is still waiting for us to wrap this up. If we take one wrong step, she'll be in serious trouble." And Yun grabbed Liang by the neck and hissed softly, "Kid, this is Imperial Dragon Codex Feng Shui. You haven't learned it yet. Hurry up and find me that drainage outlet." And Liang's eyes widened even further. Only now did he truly believe the Dragon Codex actually existed. If Yun hadn't said it herself, he'd never have believed there was a technique surpassing the An family's Feng Shui. While searching for the drainage map, he muttered, "Sister Yun, you really had us fooled. Both Sister Jing and I thought the Dragon Codex was truly lost. I risked my life breaking in here to save you, and as thanks for saving your life, you've got to teach me this Dragon Codex Feng Shui. You kept this secret so well, if I died on schedule a few days ago, you'd never have told anyone. He suddenly exclaimed. Found it. Here's the drainage system. And Yun studied the map on the visor. I was actually planning to teach Jingjing after you died, so you wouldn't have to worry about it being lost forever. The drainage system is in the left claw, right at the entrance to the platform through this corridor. Go, exit through there. And Liang looked lost. The power's out. The elevators won't work. Then, what do? We fight our way back the way we came. And Yun immediately recognized this as a terrible idea, but with no other options she snapped irritably. Then go, tell your men to lead the way. And Liang grinned. Sister Yun, technology moves fast these days. We've got a robot to clear the path. It's seen action in Afghanistan and Iraq. He quickly gave orders, and the mercenaries wheeled the robot back into the southern corridor to launch a counterattack against the Angels. This move caught the Angels completely off guard. They'd planned to trap the intruders between their forces and the Eastern Guards, but the robot's firepower shattered their strategy. Now, the machine executed a sharp about-face, spitting fire as it charged toward the Angels on the platform. Several girls reached for their lightning strike devices, but the robot was already at their feet. A few precise bursts from its machine gun dropped them instantly. The remaining Angels, seeing this, immediately began retreating. The southern section of Sub-Level 6 was originally the Angels' living quarters. Li Xiaoxin, the area's squad leader, recognized An Liang immediately, but with fellow Angels falling in combat, she couldn't stand by. Communication with the command room had already failed due to the blackout. All radios were dead. Li Xiaoxin had no choice but to assume command. Seeing the robot's assault, she ordered her team to concentrate fire and take it down first. The robot was a small tracked vehicle, standing only knee-high but incredibly fast. In the thick smoke, it was nearly impossible to hit. As it charged forward, bullets from the Angels peppered its frame, damaging some sensors mounted beside the gun, but the machine gun kept firing relentlessly. Static crackled intermittently through Li Xiaoxin's radio, a result of the ongoing electronic warfare between the command room's hackers and the intruders. Amid the chaos, she spotted an opportunity. Realizing direct attacks on the robot were ineffective, she ordered all Angels to fall back into rooms and fortify their positions. Then, she slipped through another corridor heading straight for the command room on Sub-Level 3. Adjacent to the command room was a massive server chamber housing the base's core brainwave control system. Li Xiaoxin stormed in, located the computer expert engaged in the cyber battle, and unleashed a burst of gunfire. She then planted timed explosives 1-minute detonation on every mainframe and rushed back to Sub-Level 6. Just as she returned to the platform on Sub-Level 6, a thunderous explosion echoed from above. The entire brainwave control system had been reduced to scrap metal, and Liang and his group had vanished, but the Angels were still locked in a desperate fight against the robot. 2 of its wheels had been blown out, yet it showed no sign of retreat, relentlessly hunting down the Angels. They scattered through the corridors of Sub-Level 6, dodging its fire. Those too slow to escape were shot down. Even those trying to rescue wounded teammates met the same fate. Slowed by their efforts, they fell under the robot's unrelenting gunfire. It was a hopeless, one-sided battle. Li Xiaoxin knew she had to stop this meaningless slaughter. Crouching low, she weaved through the crossfire, circling around the robot to search room by room. She needed to find Snow. Only Snow could stand against this killing machine. Soon she found Shui unconscious on the floor in the room where Yun was being held. After reviving her, she quickly explained the tactics for dealing with the robots. Despite her injuries, Shu immediately ran out of the platform and took cover in a relatively safe spot. From her backpack, she pulled out 3 saucer-shaped devices, each about the size of a teacup saucer, unmanned aerial vehicles controlled directly by the human brain. Operating these discs required extremely strong brainwaves, once known as telekinesis, a phenomenon long dismissed by mainstream academia as mystical nonsense. Yet, throughout history, many had cultivated this ability through rigorous training. Shu, however, was born with exceptionally powerful brainwaves, which made her an ideal candidate for specialized training as a disc operator. The 3 small black discs rose from beside Shu with a mechanical hum, aligning themselves in midair before arcing swiftly toward the approaching robot. They struck simultaneously from high, middle, and low angles. The impact shattered all 3 discs in a burst of fragments, and the robot toppled sideways onto the ground. Just as the robot activated its wheels at maximum power to right itself, Li Xiaoxin shouted, "Open fire!" Every rifle surrounding the machine discharged at once, blasting it into a fiery explosion. Seeing no immediate threats around, Li Xiaoxin rushed to the center of the platform and raised her fist, the signal to regroup. Fewer than 10 Angels were still able to walk, and they gathered around her. Breathing heavily, she looked around at these girls, strangers whose origins she didn't know, yet who had all lost their freedom just like her. She yanked the communicator off her head and smashed it onto the ground, then demanded sharply, "Do you even realize that the brainwave control system on the 3rd floor has already been destroyed by the intruders?" The Angels exchanged confused glances. Unsure what Li Xiaoxin meant, perhaps they were being ordered to move upstairs for another defensive assignment. Li Xiaoxin stared at them like slaves who just had their chains unlocked but still didn't understand how to run. Frustration and sorrow burned inside her, yet she couldn't be certain if some among them remained blindly loyal to the organization, so she dared not speak plainly in front of everyone. Instead, she asked again, We've lost all contact with the organization. Even the chips implanted in our brains are dead. The control system on the third floor won't be repaired. What do you plan to do now? A few girls suddenly understood. They picked up their rifles and slowly moved to stand beside Li Shoshan, but Shui and several others abruptly raised their guns, aiming directly at her. The sight pierced Li Shoshan's heart. She hadn't formed close bonds with any of the angels. The organization strictly forbade excessive interaction, but surely they all shared the same longing for freedom. When freedom was finally within reach, she never imagined only a handful would dare take that step. Through her monochrome night vision goggles, Li Xiaoshan saw a crowd of soulless figures standing in the darkness. They were intelligent. They must know this moment meant liberation, but who truly understood the fierce desire to walk away? Who was willing to betray the powerful angels, give up comfortable lives and thrilling missions, just for uncertain freedom outside? 3 months ago, if she hadn't met in Liang, she might have stood beside Xue, pointing her gun at those trying to escape the base. But today was different. Now, she herself had become the traitor.